Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, the project investigation collaboration with your host, founder of the Veritas Project, Robert Curtis,
Hello.
and investigator Todd Boyer. And this week we're going to be talking about the top 20 most commonly asked questions when it comes to the paranormal.
Yep.
And the number one big question that people always ask is, do ghosts really exist?
Yep.
And we'll answer that at the end.
Yeah.
So,
A little
so you guys know that we have been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
So, with both of our combined experience, you're looking over probably 30 years plus.
Oh, probably more than that.
So, we've been asked a few questions, and we thought we'd go ahead and answer them for you guys. So,
Yeah.
what is the difference between a ghost and a spirit?
Well, we would think that a ghost can be both of the hauntings, right? Where it can either be recorded on the environment or it can be an interactive, you know, haunting where you could communicate with the spirit. But a spirit is just a departed person. Like it's an intelligent haunting that has some sort of image, that you can you can see and interact with. Whereas a ghost can be moving things.
Right,
It could
right.
be an orb. It could be knocking. It could be any of those things could be a ghost. But a spirit typically is the disembodied
Right.
human.
So the difference basically, and if I'm getting this correctly, is the ghost is the broad term, a spirit is a specific
Right.
entity.
Right. So a ghost it could be is the umbrella term for
Right.
a paranormal haunting of some sort, whereas the spirit is the actual thing. The term I coined is the RSI, the residual self image
Yep.
of the person. That's what they think that they look like. So that's what they project themselves as. So that's why sometimes you'll hear about a haunting where it's a child haunting, but then you do research on it, find no kids ever passed away there. So, but it's actually a adult person that their image of themselves is a child.
Right. Or they view themselves as a horrible human being and
Right.
come back as some kind of
Like a demon or
monster,
monster.
demish type of
Yeah.
haunting.
The Slender Man,
Excuse me.
or like almost like a shadow person.
Right.
Where they're just a black shadow, but they're not really a shadow person. They're just a ghost. That's how they view themselves. So that's how they project it to
Empty
you.
inside.
Yeah. Right.
So, can ghosts interact with living? That's a definite yes.
Yes.
It depends on the type of haunting, which we discussed last week.
Right.
Your intelligent hauntings, yes, you absolutely 100% can communicate with an intelligent haunting. And it depends on the types of devices that you're using for,
Yeah.
the
That's a
communication.
big issue, and it's hard to explain to new investigators that you can't. If you go to like a farmhouse that's haunted with spirits from the 1800s, and you break out your cell phone or the Ovilus or something, and you're like, you can communicate with this, they have no idea what you're talking about.
Right,
They have no idea
right.
that you carry a computer around in your pocket. Like that, they have no frame of reference for that. So you have to teach them how to use the device, and then
Hmm.
they'll get better at it over time.
And the funny thing is the more often you go to a place and try to communicate and use the same communication devices,
Yeah.
the better they get at it.
Right.
So
And that
like your big haunted place like the Lemp Mansion and
Yeah.
like all the insane asylums everybody goes to and all that kind of stuff. There's been so many investigations there that's one of the reasons why they remain top 20 haunted places in the
Yeah.
nation. And, because the ghosts come there because they know they can
They can
communicate there.
communicate, right? And then it's not just that, like SB7, like
Hmm.
they recognize SB7, but it's that specific SB7 that
Right.
you have that's been there and they've communicated with in the past, and then there's some sort of relationship they have with that specific device, that's easier for them to manipulate.
Now, what's your feelings on the new um, oviluses and stuff that do whole sentences?
Right.
I'm not a fan.
I I'm still on the fence about that technology, because I've talked to Bill Chappell
Hmm.
before about it. He came here to St. Louis and
Hmm.
did a thing, and I actually got to pick his brain for a while.
Nice.
And he gave a lecture about it about the different phonetic
Hmm.
algorithms that are in the obelisk, and he even is kind of, I don't want to say like eluding, like he, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
you can't, he wouldn't give a specific
He's not gonna
answer.
say no, my shit is shit. You know, he's gonna, you know,
No, but what he was saying is that he really doesn't understand how it works,
right,
but that it works, you know.
right.
And I know that there are some app creators out there. I'm not going to name them because I've bought their products
I've
before, but
seen some of the stuff that these new investigators are using, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
yeah,
It's like,
it has multiple word banks in it. And then if you break it down like the one I did, I actually paid my own money, and
mhm,
then I got in with my computer and hacked into the JavaScript of it, and I saw how it actually works, and it's not using radio at all.
oh really?
There's no calls in it to use the radio, so all it does is it plays spooky music on a loop, and then it has 8 different word banks in it, and then through random timers, it it just picks out little words and it plays them forwards and
That's
backwards
horrible.
and different cycles of an algorithm. So they
Yeah. See, that's why I like the obelisk and it uses one word because then you got to kind of use your intuition
yeah,
and the feelings that you get along with that word
yeah.
to interpret that word almost like tarot. And it does take practice
And the
to
obelisk gives a
use it.
value too.
Yeah.
So when it'll say like, at 1600
Yeah.
door, or
Yeah. And
it'll
then
say like, you know,
the intensity of the signal that it received to
yeah,
create that
right.
that word. So
So
that's
it knows that there's at least some science in that,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas the other spirit boxes are just bunk.
Have you seen the new one now where I know there's a few groups out there where their camera puts an aura over things in the field of view.
Oh, right, right, right.
And it's like,
Yeah.
come on.
The newest one I saw, someone actually sent me a link to it on the our Veritas,
Hmm.
like info page, and it is pretty legit. But what this guy did, I suspect, is he uses Chat GPT,
Hmm.
right, and it's running on top of the Spirit Box software, right? So it knows, right? You ask a question, is there any spirits here? ChatGPT takes your sentence and then picks through the word banks and then puts out
Hmm.
a bogus reply, right? So it's listening to you talk, and you say, "Oh, is there a spirit of a little girl here?" And then the algorithm will go, "Is there a
Oh
spirit of a
man.
little girl here?" And then it'll say, "Yes, my name is Courtney," or whatever, right? And then you're
Jeez.
like, "Oh, Courtney, can I interact with you?"
Wow.
And then the AI picks that up and says, "My mama called me Court." Right? So then you're having this whole
Wow.
conversation with a chatbot that is hidden inside of a paranormal app. It is the scummiest thing. If you sell that for entertainment, then
That's one
I'm on
thing.
board,
Yeah.
right? Like all this stuff, all the paranormal stuff that you sell, and it says plainly on it, like this is for entertainment value. It's for your own fun or whatever.
Right.
But if you say this is a tool, this is for
Right. Right.
ghost
Right.
investigations, this is for evidence, then you can't have.
Well, see, and then that goes to show you that the older stuff, like the pendulums
Yeah, yeah,
and the dowsing rods and
right,
that kind of stuff, is actually better because it can't be manipulated.
right.
You know what I mean?
Trigger objects,
You know, trigger
things
objects. Yep.
that are the spirit is actually interacting with.
Right.
Like
Right.
like back in the day, back in the 90s, 80s, late 80s, early 90s, what we would do is we put like a feather in a jar
Mm-hmm.
and then leave that out with a camera pointed at it, and then whenever the motion sensor would go off, it would take a picture or whatever, and that was like the go-to thing back then.
Right. Right.
Like if a spirit can reach inside of a jar and move a feather,
Right. With a
right,
lid on
with a
it.
lid on it, right,
Nice.
then there's no possible way that can
Nice.
nothing else can do that except the spirit.
Use
Right.
a tiny little fluffy one.
Yeah,
Or,
you get like a little feather that you find, like a down feather that has like the fluff at the bottom of it,
mm-hmm.
and you just put that in a jar, screw the lid on it, and then
There you go.
I've
We're
even
gonna see
seen
more of that coming out here now.
where investigators would take like the tape and put over the top of the lid and then sign it, so that when they knew like it was that You
Right.
know, that much science back in the day, whereas now it's, it's all smoke and mirrors mostly. What can I get for the producers to approve me to be in a TV show?
Right.
Like that's all they want. They don't care about evidence. They just want
It's entertainment,
they
and
want that
that's
sizzle reel that'll get them on the Travel Channel.
yeah.
They could care less about science or proving or disproving anything.
We're never gonna make it.
Maybe though, maybe somebody wants to start a show with paranormal integrity,
Yeah,
and then we'll be all over it.
it's not as exciting.
Right.
So the viewership.
For me though, I would watch a show where real scientists went to a haunted location, that's purported to be haunted, like an asylum or something that all the TV shows have beaten up over the years,
Hmm.
and just be like, there's nothing here, nothing at all. We use the same devices they did without fancy editing and
Right.
without somebody, listen, oh, what is that? None of that noise.
Right.
There's nothing there. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I would watch
Well,
that show.
you've also got those personal experiences, that
Yeah.
happen that can't be quantified. Like the smell of cigar smoke or something
Oh,
like that.
right, right,
personal
right.
experience.
Or you
But
get
you can be like, you're like, okay, well, I can't explain that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So you have those, but yeah, I totally would watch and
Like real science
right.
in a paranormal setting where people are like, no, and it didn't happen.
So we actually answered our next question, which is how do paranormal investigators communicate?
Right.
So I mean, I
There's
think we
so many
covered,
ways. And like I said, the old jar method, and we used to do all kinds of double blind things like that. We get like one of those big like candy jars,
Mhm.
like mason jars, and put like the tri-field meter inside of that jar,
Mhm.
and then you'd be able to tell like if something was close to touch it,
Right.
it's inside of this big jar, so there's no way somebody is like with a magnet or something. Because
Right.
back in the day, that was a shady thing that people would do. They would take a wooden ruler
Mhm.
and put a magnet on it, and they'd keep it in their pocket. And then when they would sit at the table and have the tri-field meter in the middle of the table, and then
Oh,
they would just take the ruler out of their pocket and slide it
see,
around
now you're
underneath
giving
the
people ideas to do
table, and
shady
then it
crap,
would
man.
woo, woo. Those old tri-field meters made that sound, and they'd be like, oh, they're communicating with us. Look at, and you'd ask it stupid questions. Then you have the magnet, so you could just slide it under the table and
Right.
make its little woo woo noise. Yeah.
All right. So, what are common signs of a haunted location? I feel it's your most haunted locations, as far as like heavy hauntings, are the high emotional places.
Yeah.
That's why I always poo-poo on these people that go to the cemeteries.
Right. Right.
It's like, yeah, we get it. There was people there for a day, and in this area, they had this energy. But like, I'll tell you what, libraries are
Yeah.
crazy because people get crazy emotional reading a book, and then that book goes on a shelf in a library,
Right.
along with 1,000 other books that are full of emotional energy.
Right. Or they had it at their house.
Yeah, well,
And then the spirit from their house became attached to that the fetter they call it, where
mhm,
they're tethered to that book now, and then you took the book back to the library.
yeah,
So now the spirit is in the library
yeah,
because of the book.
yeah. Some of the best investigations I've done were in libraries.
Yeah.
So
Any place that
I don't
has
think we got to worry about our books.
yeah. Somebody sent me a message. I thought it was hilarious. They wanted me to turn this book around so they could read what it says. He's like,
This one,
yeah.
this one here.
He's like, can you spin that book around so I can read the? I'm like, bro,
They're not real.
it's cloth.
It's,
I can't turn
this is
it
the linen
around.
library.
I
This is,
don't know if he was being silly or what, but he's like, I want to know what's on that book. Can you turn it around? I'm like, no, I can't. I can't turn it. It's a picture. It's not real.
so, so the signs of a haunted location, there aren't any. I mean, not really. I mean, you can't just walk past a house and go, "That's haunted,"
Yeah.
You know,
Well, like look at the Amityville Horror House,
right,
right? In the 70s, that place was off the chain with
right,
all sorts of outlandish paranormal claims, and then it was bought by a family in the 80s who said nothing at all happened there.
right.
And then since then, it's changed hands numerous times, and all those people say nothing
Yeah.
paranormal ever happens there.
Well, and then we go back to the quote that you and I like: "Is seeing believing, or is believing seeing?"
Yeah,
So, I mean, it just depends on who's there and what, maybe if they brought something with them.
They're
So
not sensitive.
yeah, so there's no actual way to just go by and look and see if something's haunted or not. I
Yeah.
mean, now you could say, oh, there's a possibility, like the Crystal House,
Yeah, yeah,
or a lot of schools and churches because they're high emotional areas and
yeah.
stuff like that. And I don't know if any of you guys have you been in a school by yourself or
Oh
with
yeah,
the halls empty.
yeah,
It
yeah,
still feels like there's something there.
yeah. Kids,
You
like
know, it
that
just
energy
yeah, you
of
still feel all
children are
that
still
energy
in
and
there.
stuff. It's crazy, but yeah, there's no definite as far as like looking at a place. Um, but common signs. I mean, is there really a common sign when it comes to paranormal? I mean,
I mean, if you can look at a house that is like 2 inches of dust on everything,
right,
like the person who lives there has, you know, some kind of something going on,
right,
right? Then you that would be like a beginning to say, well, maybe there's something going on here,
yeah,
because if you go in to do like the preliminary investigation, like to meet with the family and hear about their whatever, hear their story about, and you look at the house and everything is all clean and there's kids' toys in the floor, and they're
right,
talking
right.
about all this crazy, outlandish, demonic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're not being upset, right? I mean, if their kids are playing and there's all this stuff is all clean, like,
Right, right.
but the people, when you go in and their trash is piled up and their clothes all over the floor, and you know what I mean, like, I haven't slept in a month, like, and their house looks like trash, then they probably haven't slept in a month.
So, do you think that maybe they feed off of the chaos?
Oh, they do, definitely.
So,
That's another thing that I think we had kind of touched on that a little bit in other ghost talks, is that when you acknowledge the spirit, then you give them energy. And once they have a little energy, they'll poke you to get more energy. And then once they've got ramped up enough that they can move stuff in the environment or stuff like that, then it's off to the races. But people who don't have that mindset, they'll see something move on the counter and just go back about their business.
right.
Or a spoon will slide across the table and they won't even glance at it. So then that haunting's not going to go anywhere because they're not feeding into the energy that the spirit needs to manifest itself.
So then, are there scientific explanations for the paranormal? Is our next question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes and no, because we can't really nail anything down, but you have to remember that energy can't be destroyed, it can only be transferred.
Right.
So, when you pass away, we are all big old batteries,
Right.
We're literally
The
a
whole
meat
machine.
mech,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
with a bone skeleton.
Well, we had talked about that, observability, like
Hmm.
where photons,
Right,
the
right.
photons go through the slits of light, and if
I watched that video again this week.
if you're watching it, then it makes a pattern, right? But if you don't watch it, then it scatters
Yeah,
everywhere. So the paranormal is like that too, where if if you're not observing the haunting, then does it really happen,
right.
right? Like a tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to watch it.
No,
Does it?
because the Matrix hasn't rendered it.
Right. Exactly. So that is a part of it too. Is that if you are observing it, then it gives it shape, right? Just like the photons of light in that experiment. You seeing the spirit, you're projecting your expectation of the spirit onto
Hmm.
the spirit, which then can use that energy to show itself to
It's
you
kind
in
of a
your
catch
mind.
22,
Right.
which kind of brings us to our next question: is can anyone see or communicate with a ghost?
Right.
Yes, but you have to be open to it. You
Right.
can't go in thinking, "Oh, nothing's gonna happen. I ain't gonna see the." You have to go in thinking, "Okay, I'm gonna communicate with this, and we're gonna see what's gonna happen," because you have to have
That
those
open.
pathways open in your
Yeah.
mind
Exactly.
to do that communication. You have to be willing to accept that communication. Bottom
Right.
line, you
There
know.
there are people in our past paranormal group that are hardcore debunkers, and you have to club them over the head with evidence before they'll even accept it. And whenever they go into a haunting, even a location that's really haunted.
Right.
Like the interaction will go down because they're there,
Right.
because there's so much negativity towards, like some of these people could be hit, over the head.
With a flying pillow comes
Right,
out of nowhere.
and
Oh,
still
it
not
fell off
believe
a
it.
shelf from
Right,
30 feet across the room.
right, and then
No.
they're so into debunking a haunting that they will find any kind of excuse to shoot it down.
Right.
And when the spirit is trying to interact with that person, that negativity will actually diminish the amount of energy that they can use to communicate with people that are sensitive.
So then the next one is how do ghost hunters use equipment to detect paranormal activity, which I think we've covered.
Yeah, we've kind of beaten that
We
one.
beat that one to death, actually, even just now. I mean,
The only thing I would add to that is that the equipment doesn't help the investigator. It's a
tool.
Yeah, it's a tool that you use to get evidence, whereas you have to be you are the equipment.
Yep.
You are the thing that's sensitive, right? So you have to think about that. A lot of times I'll just turn everything off and just sit in the dark and just listen, you know. And then once you hear it, or once you have decided what sort of haunting it is, then you can get into your golf bag and break out the tool for that haunting, you know.
Or
like
even just sit in the dark and listen, and not just listen, but smells are a big thing.
Yeah.
And just feelings. Just close your eyes and just, especially in your dark place, it doesn't hurt. I mean, you got your eyes closed. What's the matter?
Right.
And then when you feel like something is there, then you can just snap
Then you
a couple
snap a picture,
pictures
right,
or whatever.
exactly.
You just sit in the dark and
But
you're the equipment. So
you have to use your mind more than to rely on the next, full spectrum
right.
$3,000 camera or whatever. If you don't have that sense of where to take the picture or when to take the picture,
Right.
then $1 million camera won't do you any good.
And I hate to say this because it sounds like some Jedi freaking mind trick. But if you sit and literally see in your head to spread out your consciousness,
Oh yeah.
to extend it out into the room and maybe even out into the building, just to picture that in your head, that your consciousness is spreading throughout the area that you're in.
Right.
And
that you're open. Your
Yeah.
mind is open to receiving, whoever wants to communicate with you. To put that positivity out into the environment, to say, like, I'm here to help you. I want you to communicate with me.
and to say
then-
that stuff.
Right. That I can help you resolve your issue that's keeping you in this location. And that'll go a long way. People always think, like, that's one of the number one things. Like, what kind of equipment should I buy? And I'm like, well, don't.
Don't. Yeah.
Don't. Use your phone to get started. Get a notebook and a pen and your phone, and
Yeah.
that's all you need to get started.
Yep, absolutely.
Don't.
Well, and then, if you want to go cheap too, pendulums, you can get pendulums for like,
Or you can
$5.
make a pendulum.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
I've seen one of the best pendulums in action I've ever seen was a British lady had made one out of a coin, an old British coin. They knocked a hole in it and then had a twine, hemp string.
nice.
And she was using that the results were off the chain accurate. I was like, wow! And how much did that cost?
The coin.
Yeah, whatever that coin
and
was.
half a penny's worth of string.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was rocking that thing. It was like she had one of those. What do you like the Ouija board base? That has like it's like a circle instead of like a Ouija board. And it has like yes, no, north, south, east. It has all these things written
Right.
on it. And she was holding that pendulum, and it was hitting answers every time.
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, wow, this is amazing.
All right, so moving on, what is an EVP?
Electronic voice phenomenon. So that's where you're recording with the digital equipment. It can be analog too sometimes.
Mhm.
If you have a good
Old
enough
school
old
recorder,
school
yeah.
microphone. I have in my bin right there. I have my old. Actually, I'll show you.
So while you look for that, so the best EVPs that I've ever gotten myself, that is old school. But
This is my EVP recorder that I take on
Old.
investigations. It is old and steel, and I covered it in
Nice.
this glow in the dark tape so that way it doesn't get kicked over when
Nice.
it's sitting in the investigation. But yeah, this thing is amazing at getting EVPs.
Nice.
And I think I bought this at a thrift store for like $5.
That's actually a nice one. It's got like headphone jacks and all
Yeah.
kinds
Oh
of
yeah,
stuff.
and it has the remote
Nice.
with the so you can plug
With
in
a
the old
microphone.
microphone with the
Yeah.
switch on it. Yeah, and then you could just flip the switch, and
That's
then
nice.
it has a DC in. It has the batteries. Probably dead. I know.
So the best
There it
best EVPs that
is.
I've seen, or well, I won't say the best, but a really good story. I was at given towards the Pierre Marquette Lodge,
Uh-huh.
and a lady came up to me and said, "Hey, look at this EVP that I caught," and it was taken up in the caretaker's house.
Uh-huh.
Now the caretaker died of a heart attack up
Right.
there.
Right.
The EVP sounded like someone labored breathing having a heart attack.
Oh man.
Then later that night, someone else caught the same EVP.
Oh wow.
So I was like, "Holy crap!"
That's
that is
validation.
cool. Yeah, that's one of the best EVPs I've ever gotten.
Yeah. But typically, a EVP is recorded only on the device,
Right.
so
Yeah,
it's
you
not
don't hear it.
right. You don't hear it. So you ask a question, and I have a little Sony digital recorder from the
Got a
'90s.
nice little one.
Yeah, and that it's fantastic for that because it does it instantly. It rewinds it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
That's
it's
cool.
it's all digital. It's from the '90s though. It's like a little one battery little recorder, and I love that thing because you can just go, "Is there anybody here that wants to communicate?" Push play.
Right.
And then it immediately click back and then record over it again, or you can,
Yeah.
if there's no response, you can delete it instantly.
Mine
Those
makes
things-
files. I have to go through and delete the
yeah,
files,
it will.
but every time you hit play, it saves, and every time you stop, it saves that file. So
Right.
that's so I record, and then hold it out for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then stop,
Yeah,
and then I go back and listen to that file, and then I just delete it and do it again.
right.
Or
Or if you got it, it's empty. Because if I plug it into my computer and wipe it out, then I'll just save them all and then come home. A lot of times, I gotta have
and those are stupid cheap.
these
Yep. Get you a good set of headphones like this.
$170 headphones.
Well, you don't need to go that far. But a
With
good
these
set of
monitor
headphones.
with the sealed cups, so that they don't, no outside noise comes in. You
Noise
can,
canceling. If
Yeah.
you got some noise canceling ones,
well,
those work really
noise
good.
canceling can get away where it edits out your.
Well, it's noise canceling of the outside
Yeah.
noise is what you want.
But
so.
those work fantastic for hearing EVPs. You can turn the gain all the way up, and then
Right.
you can hear a little whisper in the background. Whereas with at the site or using the little tiny little speaker that's in the device, you won't hear it.
So, can ghosts cause harm to living? Yes and no.
Right.
Um,
That's it.
usually not immediate physical harm unless you're talking like a poltergeist and a thrown object
Right.
or something like that, or we're not talking about a ghost, we're talking about a demon
Yeah.
that can do like the scratching and that kind of stuff, because
Right.
usually that kind of stuff is not a ghost.
And
It's usually more evil.
I've known paranormal investigators who've died from interactions with haunted locations where there was a guy in our own area who was had his intestines twisted around and had a blockage in his intestine. He died from sepsis because of that. And then there's no, when they did the autopsy on him, there was no reason for it to have, he wasn't in an accident or didn't have a fall or anything for that to
Right.
happen. The only thing he did was he went to that location. So there's anecdotal evidence in both directions on that. But I would say typically if it's a human spirit that has, passed away, you're legit haunting, they can't hurt a person.
They barely have enough energy to manifest words or
Yeah.
to trigger an object.
make a feather move. But
Right.
we are dummies. So we take the plasma sphere and the Van de Graaff generator into
And
haunted-
give them all the energy they want.
give them
yeah.
more energy because we want that to get that response. So they'll go both ways with that because they don't have a lot of energy, but then like a dummy, we do give them a lot of energy. So that's a two-way street.
Right. So then, are there different types of ghosts? And I will answer this one. Yes, there are. Go back to our last podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or 2 podcasts ago,
Yeah,
I guess. Not
yeah.
Krampus, the one before Krampus.
Yeah, the one before Krampus.
So 2 podcasts ago, go back to that one, and we break it down for you.
Yeah.
Why do some places seem more haunted than others?
Yeah, we had talked about that before too, like the spiritual battery.
And the more you go, the more
Limestone,
haunted. The more
yeah.
you go in looking for hauntings, the more haunted they become.
The spirits are attracted. Spirits are attracted to people that can interact with them.
Yeah.
So if you go to a place that isn't haunted, but you have ghost hunts there regularly, spirits can go to that place
Right.
and then hang out looking for someone to talk to. So I've seen where people have had like a barn on their property that they've claimed is haunted, and it really wasn't.
But became haunted
But
over
became
time.
haunted because they had a weekly ghost hunt there, and people were using,
Right.
all the devices, and then eventually spirits maybe from the woods or from somewhere else, or maybe they're attracted to another person.
Right.
They were attached to another person. They came in there, and then they just hang out. So.
So can animals sense and see ghosts? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of cats just staring off into space.
Yeah.
And the owners will tap on them and they'll be like, what are you looking at there, Muffin?
Yeah. Well, you got to think, animals' instincts are a lot higher than our
Yeah.
instincts are.
Oh, yeah,
So
whole
they're
orders of
gonna-
magnitude higher.
So they're going to sense that stuff and feel that stuff a lot more than we are.
Right.
So that's a definite yes, for
Yeah.
sure. How do you protect yourself from paranormal entities? Well, prayer, if
Yeah.
you're talking like darker things. And when you leave someplace, you have to let them know that they're not allowed to follow you.
Yeah.
You have to set boundaries, and you have to be strong-willed about it. You can't be weak-willed about it. You have to say it and mean it.
Yeah.
You know.
And when you first notice that a spirit has followed you home or made a connection to you, just tell them, hey,
You don't
you're not
belong
welcome
here.
here.
Yep.
You don't. Our interaction at your location is the time and place for that interaction, whereas in my house is not.
Right.
I'm not going to break out the spirit box in my house. I'm not going to use a pendulum. I'm not going to do any of that stuff in the house. So if you're looking to communicate with me here, you're out of luck. You
Right.
pack up and go back to your haunted mansion or whatever.
So are ghost stories based on real experiences? Well, again, yes and no.
So yeah, some can
Everything that Bob and I will tell you, they have happened to us.
be. Yeah.
And of course people are going to be out there and they're going to make up stuff and
Or somebody will
just to
tell
try and
my
get a
story.
rise out of somebody.
That's one of the biggest irritations I have with this field is that I'll go to talk to somebody about ghosts and hauntings, and then someone will tell me my story that they heard from someone else. And you're like, oh man. Like, well, I don't know if you ever heard this story, blah blah blah. That was me. That was me.
I have the perfect example of that. So this has been 8 or 9 years ago. Now, this is not a ghost story, but this is how we're going to relate to this. I went to the mall, and I was at Taco Bell, and you remember the guy that we used to work with used to give out $2 bills.
Yeah.
So I had some $2 bills, and I went to Taco Bell in the mall and was going to pay with some of these $2 bills because something cost $18, and to give change, he would just give you a $2 bill.
Right.
And he thought it was cool, but
Right,
whatever.
thought it was funny.
So the girl at the Taco Bell was like, I can't take this. It's counterfeit. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
So then she calls her manager, who was another young person, and he's like, well, we can't take this. It's counterfeit. I'm like, it's real money.
Right.
And they're like, well, we're going to call security. I'm like, please call security.
Right.
And so security comes, and security's an older guy like myself. And he's like, what's wrong? He's trying to pass off this counterfeit bill. And he's like, well, how do you know it's counterfeit? And they're like, well, it's a $2 bill. He's like, but how do you know it's counterfeit?
Right.
Because they'd never seen a $2 bill before. Right. So he's like, why is this counterfeit? And then he puts 2 and 2 together, and he's like, there is such a thing as a $2 bill.
Right.
And he tells them, and it blew their mind.
Right.
I found that story on Facebook almost word for word the way I posted it on Facebook. Someone else was passing it off as their story.
Wow.
And I was like, are you kidding me? They
Yeah.
even had the security guard's name. They didn't even change his name. I mean, they passed it off for their story word for word.
Wow.
So be wary of what you hear.
Right.
Bob and I are always going to tell you what we found and what we haven't found.
Right.
But I find that a lot of people that you meet on the street, if you start talking ghost, they are going to tell you a true story because it excites them to tell you that
Right.
story.
They want to get it
So,
off their chest of something that happened to them. Like
Yep.
when we were standing on the street in Waterloo, just listening to people's ghost stories, and probably 10 people came by to talk to us.
They didn't want to do it
but
on
they didn't want
camera,
to go on camera, right?
but they wanted to tell us their
But
story.
they wanted to tell you their story. So everybody had a story, but nobody wants to
Do it on camera.
go on camera, right?
No. Our noisemakers.
The other dog's up there. Every time someone wants to leave, the dog goes insane. He has abandonment issues.
Okay. What role do mediums play in communication with spirits? Mediums are just more sensitive to the energy. I mean, they have the same instincts that we have, just more heightened.
Yeah.
You know, they're more
in tune.
More in tune with. They're more. What's the word I'm looking for? They're more in tune with feelings.
Yeah.
And other people's feelings.
Yeah.
And that usually gets them to where they need to be, and they get pictures a lot of times in their head, or they feel that someone's directly talking to them. That's when I use the Ovilus, I get pictures in my head.
Yeah.
The word creates pictures in my head, and that's why I'm so good with the Ovilus. I'm not saying I'm psychic or a medium or anything like that. I've just used it enough that I'm good. You know?
It's a tool that you use to enhance your already there perception.
Right.
Right. And mediums are the same way. If a real medium.
Real medium.
Not somebody who woke up tomorrow and said, "Oh, I'm going to be a spirit medium
John.
now." Right.
John.
Yeah.
We used to have this medium, John, that used to be in the paranormal group that Bob and I were in together.
He was
John
fantastic.
Was ridiculous, bringing up things that he should never know.
Yeah.
Like absolutely never know.
And he would one time I was standing by the soda machine in the location we talk about, and there's like stairs that go up.
Yeah, where I saw my shadow person.
Yeah, he was giving a walking tour, and he was talking to the people, right? And he was like, and then this is where the spirit of the little, the drowned boy would comes up and down these stairs, and as he's walking past me, he goes, I forget what it even was, but it was something. He was like, somebody wants to talk to you, but I don't have time for that right now. And then kept going on, and I was like, all right then.
Well, he kept doing it. He's like, someone is pestering me. I got to do a reading for you.
Yeah.
And so like it was months later, because we only did that location like once a month. So like 3 months later, he's like, come on, let's get this over with. And we go outside, and he talks to me, and he's telling me things that like, so my best friend passed away, and I used to bring him. I was in the military, you know, both Bob and I were, and I used to bring him boonie hats.
Oh yeah.
And John goes, "What's the deal with the hats?" I'm like, "What?" You know, and he used to, so I would give him a boonie hat, and he had some pins and stuff that he would stick on it, and he would wear the hat every day. When that one wore out, I'd get him a new one, right?
Nice.
And he said, "What's the deal with the hats?" to me, and I was like, "Holy crap." You know, so there are some real people out there that really, but I think that people that are sensitive, if they keep at it, I think they can become more sensitive.
Yeah. If it's already there, you can tune it and become more sensitive. But you can't, as a lay person, you can't just wake up one day and decide you're going to be a sensitive and then hone that, because you can. Don't let me say that, because you can be a complete lay person and become sensitive at a low level.
Right.
But you can't become extraordinarily sensitive unless you already have that gateway open.
And that usually starts. You usually start early. You realize that you have a little bit of a gift when you're young,
Yeah,
and you're open to it,
right.
and
And
it'll grow.
you turn in that direction
Yeah,
and start enhancing it, and then over
and
time,
I think that's where a lot of legit paranormal investigators come from, is they
yeah,
do have that sensitivity, and
right,
they feel it, and they want to go out and see what's going on.
yeah,
You know. All right.
exactly.
So, can ghosts be captured in photographs or videos? Yes.
Yes, one hundred
Yes,
percent.
100%. I'm sure. I'm going to take this moment right here and pause, because I know Bob will have some stuff to throw in picture wise.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put some the photographic evidence, like we always say, the peak of that has already gone
Right.
because digital cameras back
Filter
when
so much out.
right they're designed to get rid of what we want to take a picture of. So if you have like $1,000 DSLR and you go into the most haunted location on Earth,
You're not going to catch.
you're not going to catch anything with that camera because it's designed to filter out everything that we're trying to take a picture of.
Right.
So you have to find a digital camera from like the early 2000s that does not have all those filters in it, and it takes terrible pictures because
Yep.
that's where you're going to get your best. Like the inside joke all the time is like, how come all the UFO photos are taken with fuzzy cameras?
Right.
Like, well, because those old cameras that took bad pictures have no filter on it,
Yeah.
and they take fantastic paranormal photos. But you're 30, 30, what do they have to, like 30 something, the
Oh, megapixels.
megapixels.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Like, yeah, like the 30 and 40 megapixel camera is not going to take a picture of a mist.
Right.
You
right.
know, it's just not. It's going to be razor sharp focus because it's so many pixels.
What I find that can help with the newer cameras, is if the area that you want to take a picture of, you take a picture of farther back, and then zoom in.
Yeah.
And that's not a focus area for the camera, so you tend to catch more. But do you fall into that trap? What's that called where you see faces and
Yeah,
everything?
pareidolia.
Pareidolia, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I know.
a lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's pixelation and pareidolia."
Pareidolia is right on the top of my mind, but not megapixel.
And I could actually see part of the word in my head and couldn't, because I was just talking to somebody about this like yesterday or the day before. But so
Yeah.
people will be like, "Oh, that's pareidolia or that's pixels or whatever." But when you're looking at something and it's fuzzy, okay, this has two perfect eyes and some nostrils,
Right.
and there's shape for lips here, and that looks like a chin line there. Like, it's close. I mean, it's so close to a face. So you tell me that I'm just seeing a face? I mean, it's a face.
Yeah.
You know?
What you can do with that is take like a card and put it over like half of the face and look at it again. Like look away and then look back. And if you still see half a face, then it's half a face.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because it'll get rid of the pareidolia. But if you're looking at it and it looks like a face to you, you could cover up part of the face and then look back at it. And if it still looks like it, or if it looks like just a regular mist, then
I've got a picture that is very, very hard for people to see, because it is further back in the pixels. And when people see it, they go, because I have to, I go, okay, now look at this, because they try to see into the picture rather than look at the you know what I mean?
Zoomed out
part. Yeah, they don't look at. They're trying to look at the picture rather than what's right in front of them.
Right.
But it is legitimately a guy turned to the side like this, and you can see the brow come down. You see the eye socket, the nose, and down to the lips and the jawline, and you can see the ear and the hairline. It's a crazy picture, but when you see it, you're like, "Holy crap!" Once you see that picture.
Right.
So.
Yeah, once you see it, we talk about that a lot as far as ghosts. Is once you see it, then you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like a lot of times. I don't want to rewind, but how hauntings work is that once they're doing their own thing, the ghost is doing their own thing. They're just living their best afterlife, cruising around doing it. But you notice them, and then they notice that you've noticed them. and then now it becomes a thing.
Right.
Because now, before they were just, you know, walking from door to door, whatever they've been doing for 100 years. But now that they know that you could see them, like you made eye contact with it, and now it's a whole new thing. Now their new thing isn't walking down the hallway anymore. Now it's trying to get a rise out of you.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so that can happen too, where if you ignore it, it'll go away, or at least lose some of its energy. But if you
Right.
if you obsess about it, then it's going to become a worse thing than it was.
Right. So what's the history behind famous haunted location? Well, that just it depends. I mean, there could be a lot of things happen in a location, and people start picking up on it,
Yeah.
or it could be, it just really depends. And I think your most famous haunted places are the ones that are full of energy, full of emotional energy, and people pick up on it, and then they start exploring it and do investigations, and it gets more powerful. And
Right.
I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, the history of any building can be the history of any building.
Or it could be too that because the history is so well known,
Right.
that people are more apt to interact with it because they know the name of the entity, they know what they look like. So when they see a fuzzy picture,
Right.
they can be like, "Oh, look, this is the dress that she used to wear." You know?
Well, what's funny is there's also places out there that are extremely haunted that people don't realize that they're extremely haunted. Like really popular places, like the Fox Theater, for one.
Oh yeah.
Like I tell people, yeah, I give towards the Fox Theater. Here's what I caught. Blah blah. And they're like, the Fox Theater's haunted.
Oh,
It's unbelievably haunted.
Yeah.
They don't even realize how haunted the Fox Theater is. And it's so just whatever gains popularity.
Right.
In an
Yeah.
area, if they push it, if it's like, they make it part of their story
Right.
to be haunted. Like the Fox Theater, it's the Fox Theater. They don't, hey, we're haunted. We're the haunted Fox
Yeah,
Theater.
except in
No,
October.
they just, in October.
And then it's a
you
big
get the
thing in
ghost stories.
October,
Yeah.
but the rest of the year, like, no, nothing ever happens here.
So, are there cultural differences in ghost belief? Yes.
Yeah, big time.
So if you go overseas, then you start getting into like elementals and things which we discussed
Yeah,
two
that
podcasts
we talked
ago.
about before.
So so we're gonna kind of skip over that one.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to touch on briefly on that
Okay.
because like people's religious beliefs come into that too,
That too.
because then they have expectations of the spirit, and then the person that is the spirit
Right.
had different cultural beliefs too, so
Right.
you can also think about that, whereas you're like a Roman Catholic person and you go into a haunted place and the person that's haunting it is like a Hindu or something, they won't interact with you like the same that
Right.
your expectation of another
They have bias.
Christian. Right? So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. Especially if it's an intelligent haunting.
Yeah.
They can absolutely have bias towards you. Can skeptics be convinced of the existence of ghosts? Again, another yes and no.
Yeah. It depends on the person,
Yeah, it
really.
depends on the person. If somebody's open-minded
Right.
and you take them in and you show them enough, there have been times where we've had the tours where we
yeah.
did the investigation, and people are like, yeah, whatever. By the time they leave, they're like, holy crap, this was amazing.
Yeah.
Totally changed their mind.
Right.
You know,
Well, how many
So-
times I've been given a tour and like the spirit box isn't doing anything, so I'll break out like the obelisk, and the people will be like, whatever, ask a question, and then the response will just 100%
Dead on,
be
yeah.
exactly what they were looking for, and it just blows their mind. Like they're just like, what? How does it know that? I'm like, you're talking to the spirit, that they know, you're trying to talk to your family member's spirit, and then they really do talk to you. Then
Right.
they know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Because I've heard people before at one of those demonstrations like I'm talking about, and they'll say, well, my mom used to call me this certain name, and the spirit box will say like something close, like
Yeah.
like right next to it, like it was supposed to be like pudding and it said puddle, and then they just lose it, like breaking
Right.
down, oh my God, that's my mother. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, they're
this
there.
this is real stuff,
Yeah.
Not everything is the Travel Channel. Some of it is actually real.
Yep. So, do ghosts really exist?
Yeah.
Yes. And let me paraphrase that by saying that Socrates said, the only true knowledge is to know that we know nothing.
Yeah.
Okay? Because if we think that we understand anything in this universe, no, we don't. We don't we understand 1/1,000,000th of 1/10 of 1%
Yeah.
of this universe and life and how things work. We barely understand the things going on our own planet. So how
100%.
ghosts work and how the afterlife works, we do not know. Why they're here, we don't know. Some people speculate, it's leftover residual energy. Other people speculate that it's another dimension.
Right.
It's we don't know.
It could be all of that.
Yeah, it could be all of that,
And,
and.
and the way we are geared in our investigation, it is all of it.
Yeah.
Because we want the evidence.
Right.
We don't want like the our predetermined thing to be what we're looking for. We're just looking, we want.
You
we
have
want
to
the answer.
not have a filter
Right.
when you do investigations.
And I was a little kid reading Hans Holzer's books, from our library, and going back to then, in the 70s, reading those old books, and that I can have all that knowledge, from 40 something years of reading paranormal stuff, and I still will tell people I don't know.
Yeah.
What did this person say? Like, I can tell you, what I've read, and what I've done and what I've seen, but I can't definitively.
The best thing we could say is go out there and do investigations and experience it yourself.
Yeah, see it yourself.
And come up with your own determination.
Right.
But the more you do, the better you get, and the more you find.
Right.
So it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
And
eventually you'll get to the point where you can look at a ghost photo and be like, that's a shadow. Or
that's
a, yeah.
Yeah.
And people always, I can't tell you how many times I can see them fishing for their phone when they're walking up to me and like, oh, here we go.
Be skeptical. Bob and I are very, very skeptical because we've seen so much.
Yeah.
And like he said, we can spot some bullshit from a mile away.
Yeah.
But, to put it in not nice terms.
Right. But people, they like we say, though, they get caught in their emotions and they want there to be something there.
And I think that was our biggest problem with the group that we were in before, is everything was pushed to be paranormal because it was pushing more towards entertainment than the science of it.
Right.
So.
And like we always say, though, in October, right, when that's what sells, I'm 100% on board to make a, make a theatrical ghost experience for people, because we can do that stuff,
Right.
Like I can hook up a word bank to the spirit box and make responses, and I can play spooky music and show you lasers and shadows, and I can do all that stuff.
Yep.
But we don't do that stuff because this is science, right? It doesn't help anybody to, let's get away from ghosts for a minute, right? Let's say you had a drone and you made it look like a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And you went out with some friends and you staged a thing saying, we're going to go capture a UFO video. And then you fly the drone over there and take a video of it and then put it out to the media saying, look, I caught this UFO footage.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100% bunk. You made it, so it's fake.
Right.
So what benefit does that have to ufology and science and everything? Because it's just manufactured junk. It's like you want to be a bodybuilder, so you eat nothing but Snickers bars every day. You know what I mean? Like you're never going to be able to be at the apex of anything if it's all based on junk. You know what I'm saying? So you have to have scientific method, you have to have evidence, and like you say, sometimes the absence of evidence is the evidence of absence, right?
Right.
Sometimes not having evidence is the evidence,
Right. That's why we always say too, like a paranormal investigation can be the most boring 3 hours of your life because you're sitting there legitimately waiting for something to happen and never happens.
Right. Never does, because it's not really a haunted place.
Yeah.
Or it could be not. Some hauntings are like a battery, like we've talked about, where they charge up, they discharge, and then they go dormant, and it could be decades of dormancy. It could be a dead cell for decades before it something sparks it to regenerate that battery, and then it goes off again, and then it's like the most haunted, like the locally the Bell Witch Cave, in Tennessee. Is it Tennessee or Kentucky?
No idea.
Oh, they kind of blend together down there. But
Don't say that. You're going to offend some of our viewers.
in the olden days, the wagon days, that place
Right.
was off the chain. Like people were physically beaten by the spirit out there. They've seen all kinds of crazy stuff, and then it's completely dead for decades, and then it'll jump off again, and then it'll be wolves in the forest and like the whole nine, and then once that energy's gone, then it's just a regular location again. So you don't know, is it the date, that something's happening, or something happens because somebody's there to see it,
Right.
so
Right.
basically you're never going to convince somebody 100% if they're a skeptic. That's
Right.
what I'm saying. You can't force somebody into believing something, unless you like tape them to a chair and play like water.
Eyes open.
You will believe it, But no, you're right. But in the loosest terms, like somebody has to have that emotional reveal
Right.
to believe it, until they're in the dark room face to face with the demon or something. They're never going to be 100%.
Right.
And that's how all life is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
If
That
you
is
spoon
true.
feed somebody something, they're gonna think, oh, this tastes like junk, right? But if they pick it up themselves,
Mhm.
it's the best thing they ever tasted, right? And that's the way a lot of this is. That if you don't sugarcoat it for somebody,
Right.
then they won't accept it. So
All right. Well, that answers the top 20 questions
there you go.
that we had. And, we thank you guys for joining us this week. And don't forget to check out our other social medias. Investigator Todd are all mine.
Right.
And
The Veritas
Veritas
Project.
Project and R.S. Curtis
Yep.
on Bob's. And I know we're all over everything.
We're slowly
Instagram and
working on the Spotify page.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a reveal of our all the stuff that's on YouTube getting smashed by the Project Veritas people
Yep.
will be on Spotify, where it'll have its own search. So we'll show up first on our search on Spotify.
Yep. And I found that if you search now, that we actually gave the podcast a name.
Yeah.
Project
Project
Investigation
Investigation.
Collaboration.
That helps.
If you put that in, it pops right up too.
Yeah.
So that helps us not get buried beneath everything. We'd appreciate if you just hit the thumbs up for us, the like,
Yeah.
subscribe. You'll see when the new podcasts come out.
Ring the bell.
Ring the
The
bell, all that good
notification
stuff.
bell.
Yeah.
Do all that stuff. Yeah.
And please share.
Yeah,
Please,
say if
please
you-
share. If you know somebody that you think would enjoy it in the least
Yeah.
little bit, if you share it and they don't watch it, the share helps us. So,
Right. And if you found any value in any of these rambling discussions we get into,
well, that's what I kind of like today. Is like it seems a lot of people like our rambling discussions, and today was all rambling discussions.
yeah, we had 20 topics that we wanted to touch on, but it's all our experience with those topics is what makes it interesting, I think, because we do have a lot of time in dark places sitting around
Sitting around waiting for things to
waiting
happen.
for something to happen. Yeah, and that's just the ghost side too, because we also do UFOs and cryptids and everything else. So it's not just sitting in the dark basement. Sometimes it's sitting in the dark field. Yeah, that sure is a light from the highway. I'm glad I waited for 8 hours to see that.
Oh, look, a UF airplane.
Right.
Yeah.
Or yeah, and it comes by every night, and you get out your app, and you're like, oh, that's a satellite, bro, right there. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a satellite.
Well, we have one here by where we live. If you go into the valley down by Valmeyer, it's just above the horizon, and it goes across the horizon
oh, the ghost
every
lights.
evening.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's always been there from what I've known, but I'm sure it's like an aircraft or something, or
Probably,
you do
train,
satellite or
something.
something. No, it's up above the
Oh,
bluff.
is it really?
Yeah, you can see it. It's just a bright light or whatever that goes by every night. It's like way off in the distance,
Right.
but it's something, probably an aircraft or something. But But we appreciate you being here.
Right.
Next week we are going to talk about Yule and some of the
Christmas
traditions
traditions.
and how the weird little Santa Claus elves,
Right.
you
Where all
know,
that comes from. We talked about Krampus already.
right.
So we thought we'd do.
We'll touch base on Krampus probably again
Yeah.
because obviously we're going to talk about St. Francis, St. Nicholas.
Right.
So you might get a second minor dose of Krampus. But so next week is Yule, and we thank you guys once again for coming to check us out. And remember,
Stay curious.
and find the truth, and we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.